when they get to have a lot of rounds is that, like, if you play more rounds, people who know their decks, like, eventually they'll get their wins.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's nice in something like an Invitational. You can lose 3 times and still make top 8, and that's a lot of breathing room.
Right. Helps you mitigate those things like mulligans and bad matchups and let your experience show through.
Right.
Our match for top 8 here, this is between Joshua Hoffeld and Christopher Johnson. Josh is on Mono Black Devotion. Strong deck in the format, no one to argue with that. But Christopher Johnson, we've already seen him once today. He's on this Naya aggro. It's almost like a Naya mid-rangey deck, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, and I like the look of this deck. It is just all 4 ofs, 24 land, but it is no fuss, no muss. It's kind of like the Brave Naya deck, except it doesn't play Brave the Elements or the 1-drop. So it just has some hard-hitting guys. Still has the Boros Charm Gore-Clan Rampager combo in it for, you know, that nice 10-point finish.
Yeah, one of the only decks, I think, to still be playing 4 Boros Reckoners in it.
Yeah.
Probably the only.
Oh, Reckoner's really good now with all the Rebel Red decks running around.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're underway. Naya and Chris starting off on a pair of temples. Remember, he doesn't play Elvish Mystic or Caryatid. No Mana Empress in this deck. It's just fat. So, setting up to start the beats on turn 3. And Josh starting on a land. You see a pair of Underworld Connections in his hand, and he's going to go ahead and take a look. He's with the Thoughtseize. And in this matchup, from the black side, I'm thinking you're on your, like, Doomblade Underworld Connections plan here, right? You kill a guy, you kill a guy, you kill a guy, then you draw some extra cards.
Yeah, I mean, like, Connections is okay, right? But it's probably one of the cards that is going to get sideboarded out just because it's a little slow. I think really what you want is removal plus a clock.
Yeah.
Instead of drawing extra cards, you just take away their life points and try and kill them before they can find enough burn with, like, Boros Charm and stuff like that.
Interesting choice there. Seeing his hand, he saw there were 3 business spells in Chris's hand. It was a Boros Charm, or 4 business spells. Boros Charm, Mizium Mortars, Gore-Clan Rampager, and then he had a 3-drop as well. He opted to not take any of the creatures. He took Mizium Mortars.
Well, you take Loxodon Smiter, that's not going to end up too well for you. But
sure.
Yeah, you could take Gore-Clan Rampager, certainly. But by taking the Mortars, it's kind of signaling like, hey, I have a guy that I want to protect here.
Yeah. I mean, the guy, you'd think it has to be something like Pack Rat, right?
It could be that. It could just be a Nightveil Spectre.
And we'll get a chance to see. Smiter hits the board, and Smiter poses some difficulties for Mono Black. If you look at his hand, you know, his other removal spell in hand is Bioblight. And this Naya aggro deck, it's having none of that card.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, it is possible that you're able to set up a situation where you get to block the Smiter and still Bioblight it, but knowing that Chris has the Rampager in his hand, that's going to be really tough.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to kill this guy. You look at Josh's hand, you see he has Bioblight, Underworld Connections, Nightveil Spectre. Like, his numbers are just not big enough, right? His creatures are 2/3, his removal's -3. Like,
yeah.
These guys are just too big.
Sometimes the 4/4 is the king of the battlefield, you know?
Absolutely. Well, he's going to play the Nightveil Spectre. This is what he cleared the way for. And you have to think he, like, has a plan in mind to deal with 4/4 into 4/4 because he left Christopher with those cards, right?
Right. Well, I think in order for Joshua to get anything going, he very much needs to stick a creature, so he's not happy that he leaves his opponent with 2 4/4s, but I think that's kind of what he has to be doing.
All right, and we see that 4/4 into 4/4, so exactly what Josh knew was coming. Now he's got to answer it. Nightveil is in play. Josh was down to 14. Remember, the advantage when all your creatures are 4/4s is it does not take many hits to kill your opponent.
Right.
Pack Rat, the play for Joshua. And now that he cast the Gore Clan, now is the Spellblight might be alive.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the plan, especially with this Nightveil Spectre sitting back. It is entirely possible that maybe he wanted to use the Nightveil to try and draw a land because he was a little short on lands, but he drew the 4th one, so now it's kind of a lock, right, where you just want to use the Bioblight and hope that this works.
Yeah, he's going to block with Nightveil, cast Bioblight. He knows it might just trade with a Boros Charm.
Yeah, but I think that's fine.
Right.
You trade with Boros Charm and prevent a bunch of damage.
But instead, Chris does not save his creature at all with the Boros Charm. He lets it die, and looks like he's playing nothing, but as we know, that's not the case. Shuffle the top of his hand. To the top of his hand is an Advent of the Worm.
We've seen a lot of that card today.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about this Naya aggro deck is the numbers are huge, right?
Yeah.
We have 4/4s for 3, 3/3s for 2, into 4/4s for 3, into 5/5s for 4. Your power is 1 higher than the mana on every spot in the curve.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is not messing around with things like Dryad Militant. It is playing the most efficient, hard-hitting cards in the Naya colors.
Yeah, and Joshua with probably what I think would be the best draw his deck has to offer that turn of Desecration
Yeah,
Demon.
almost certainly. I mean, that's Demon is one of the cards that is able to hold off these giant creatures basically all on its own. Like, drawing a removal spell would be nice, sure, but Demon has the potential to actually brick wall all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's, green usually gets the biggest creatures around, except black gets to have ones that are even bigger, but they have drawbacks. And in this situation, the Desecration Demon drawback's not too bad.
No, I mean, if Christopher is sacrificing a creature, I think you're okay with that. It's not the ideal situation, but...
Yeah, and we see that. He's going to sack Smiter to tap the Demon. He plays that. And Chris is actually shocking for this land, which signifies he's willing to play Boros Charm here.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like...
Does he just... He has him.
Yeah,
he's dead.
That's just it, right? You double strike the worm, and then no matter how Joshua blocks, then it's fine.
He swings for 9. If Joshua blocks the Smiter, you double strike the worm and kill him. And you just double strike the worm. And Josh is dead here. And when all your cards have huge numbers on them, it just doesn't take very many of them to kill someone.
Yeah, like, all of these threats are very much in the same camp, where it's like, you better kill me, otherwise you're probably going to die.
Yeah. And there you go, game 1 to Christopher Johnson. It's like one of the few situations where you see the double striking from the Boros Charm just like straight up doing more damage than 4 to the dome.
Right.
It's like, hey, I actually have a 5/5. It's more this way.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have the Rampager, right? But I like that he didn't use the Boros Charm to save his 4/4, right? Because he got to play the 5/5 worm and then set up a lethal attack on the next turn and got his opponent to exactly 0.
The tempting play is to use Boros Charm to save your Rampager that turn. I guess when you have Advent, maybe not. Maybe you're like, hey, I have this Advent plus Boros Charm. Like, if I play Boros Charm here, I can't play Advent, so I might as well play it.
Right.
But impressive stuff there from Christopher Johnson. To me, like, capitalized on the fact that Joshua's removal, that is stuff like BioBlight. These really, like, things that are not that well positioned to deal with a bunch of fat creatures.
Yep, exactly. So for the sideboard, we have Joshua's, which is 2 Freakus Cure, 3 Drown in Sorrow, 2 Golgari Charm, 1 Ultimate Price, 1 Erebos God of the Dead, 3 Duress, and 3 Lifebane Zombie.
It's removal, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so Lifebane Zombie will do a lot of work there. It can, especially when Joshua's on the play, you have to think it might snag a creature. Ultimate Price seems great. It usually just kills something straight up.
Usually, but not in this deck, actually. Christopher's cards are all multicolored creatures except for the Advent token.
You're absolutely right. That is not protected at all.
So Joshua has access to a lot of removal like Freakus Cure and Drown in Sorrows. But yeah, like a lot of the removal that Joshua has, Freakus Cure, Drown in Sorrow, not very effective against these giant monsters. So we saw that in game 1 with BioBlight where, Joshua had to work for it a little bit, right? He had to set up the block, and even then it still could have just traded with Boros Charm. But, thankfully he was able to clear the way for it, so that actually worked out. But things like Freakus Cure, Drown in Sorrow, Golgari Charm, not very effective against this deck. And even Ultimate Price, which is like, this is kind of the matchup where you would want your Doomblade sideboard slot to come in.
Yeah, so overall, it seems like his board is not, like, I don't know how well positioned this mono black deck is to deal with what Christopher's doing with these large creatures.
He's got some Lifebane Zombies, and those will certainly help. And I think for the most part, he needs to just have like an Abrupt Decay or a Hero's Downfall a little bit earlier.
Sure.
To deal with that stuff, and then he should be okay.
Yeah, so you think he'd be okay, but there's just like some cards that are pretty weak in this matchup, right? So like Night Veil Spectre, we saw it that game. Like, it just doesn't seem like Joshua has time for cards like Night Veil or Underworld Connections in this matchup.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Christopher is not messing around. He is getting people dead.
Yeah. And rather than stabilizing with extra card draw, you want to stabilize with Desecration Demon. You'd rather stabilize with...
certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, especially against a deck where you got to assume that Chris is going to keep in all of his Boros Charms. Like, it's really risky to go lower than 5 life.
Yeah. On the other side, when you look at Chris Johnson's deck, his sideboard does not offer too much for this matchup. When you look at the sideboard, you see cards like Unflinching Courage, Skylasher, Glare of Heresy, Setessan Tactics. Even cards like maybe you want Banishing Light because of the power of Desecration Demon in this matchup, so you might want a hard removal to that. But outside of that, he has Magma Spray, Nyx Fleece Ram. I really don't see anything he wants here.
It could be one of those things where you feel like you are already advantaged enough in this matchup. So maybe you don't need much. And, Chris could touch on some Banishing Lights. He already has 4 Selesnya Charms to deal with Demon. Like, do you want more than the 4 copies that they have? Maybe.
All right, well, we are underway. Both players keeping on 7. We're on game 2 here. Remember, this is 4 top 8 between Joshua Hoffeld and Christopher Johnson. Turn 1 Thoughtseize, we're going to get to see what Christopher's working with, and it's a pretty good one. He's got 3 lands, all his colors set up: Celestia Charm, Banishing Light, Advent, Voice.
Yeah, that's not bad, but this is one of the hands that Thoughtseize can really punch a hole through, right? If he takes the Voice of Resurgence, Christopher isn't really doing a whole lot.
Yeah, now he's left with Charm, Banishing Light, and Advent. So he doesn't really have a real creature until turn 4, Advent, which Joshua can race that.
Yeah, I mean, he can certainly make a 2/2 with the Celestia Charm, but that's not offering up a lot of pressure, and that's really something that you might want to save for something like a Desecration Demon, and just maybe use the Banishing Light on something like a Pack Rat.
Yeah, and here we go again. Joshua on turn 2 is going to Thoughtseize again. This time it takes Celestia Charm. And I mean, this to me is like the clinic in why Thoughtseize is just a ridiculous Magic card.
Yeah.
Like, people who keep, if you can really just destroy anybody's draw if they're trying to do anything synergistic. It's like, oh, you're playing like some tricks and some creatures. Well, I'll take all the creatures.
Right, exactly.
And then you're left with like lands and tricks. So we'll see if Christopher can recover. And looks like pretty well, actually. And Joshua missed his 3rd land.
Yeah. So that can be some trouble, but he bought himself a lot of time with the Thoughtseizes. Missing another land drop, now things are going to get a little dicey, right?
Yeah.
Especially after he's firing off another Thoughtseize.
Well, the other Thoughtseize is pretty good. He's going to have a chance to get this Advent gone, which I'm pretty sure he has to. If it hits play, he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, so now you're up against a Voice of Resurgence, a Banishing Light, and whatever comes off the top.
Right. We see the Temple Garden, and Luxodon Smiter is what comes off the top. No slouch there. There is a Hero's Downfall in Joshua's hands. If he hits the land this turn, he should be fine, but he hits a Pack Rat. That's not going to be good enough. Or not now. He's at 12. This swing's going to put him to 6. And Christopher Johnson, his deck's firing on all cylinders. You see Mizium Mortars, a swing there. And Banishing Light, and there you go. Joshua keeping a hand full of Thoughtseizes, 2 lands, does not get things to come together. And what consistency from the Naya deck. Like, when you're playing all 4 ofs and just like this solid mana base, when your opponent stumbles, like, this deck is punishing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, Mono Black is kind of punishing in the same way, right? Where it's like you can go Thoughtseize Pack Rat and just put a game away, but